Remember the bloodbath at Borgifa? Of course you do. All of you Bethard underlings know the tale. The gods have demanded justice, and I am their champion.
The stench of death hung heavy over the killing grounds, thick and stagnant in the summer heat. It wasn't the first time Alfred Valens had seen a dead body. It was a soldier's duty to make as many of them as possible, after all. But what he saw brought him near to retching. The men had been dead for a week, maybe more, just as the riders had said. Looks like they were right. Eric coughed, shielding his nose with the back of his hand. It was a stupid and obvious thing to say, but Alfred himself was at a loss for words. He stared down at the ruin that used to be the king's soldiers, their features having withered away into nothingness. What was unmistakable, however, was the eagle sigil of Betanthia on their breastplates. What sort of brigands would do something like this and not take a single thing off the bodies? Alfred pondered out loud. It seemed strange for anyone to attack a Betanthian patrol, but not take their pick of the spoils. There was plenty of fine steel, armor, and provisions, all of which could fetch a decent coin, or be put to good use if one were so inclined. He swatted at a fly that danced around his face, then donned a crested steel helm over his mop of shaggy blonde hair. Alfred Valens was the last son of a dying line, and had produced no heirs for himself. His father reminded him of it often. He was every bit the image of Lord Cedric, and just as stony and calculating, though a man of fewer words, if such a thing were possible. You know these Northmen, they like to kill for sport, Eric replied. Alfred grunted. There was some truth to what he said. The barbarian tribes were more akin to animals than men, but it was Dold Lurson's job to keep the peace in Kortal and the surrounding lands. A peace that was often precarious. That was the agreement, the price for their relative autonomy. What good was a chieftain that couldn't uphold his end of the bargain? It's possible. Alfred turned away from the hideous mess before him. Someone knows what's happened here, and whoever is responsible needs to pay. His father demanded nothing less. Cedric Valens would be waiting at Castle Morden for the offenders to return in irons so they could be promptly executed for their crime. Perhaps a good hanging would help to restore order, since Dold seemed incapable of maintaining it by virtue alone. How could he allow such a thing to happen? Alfred had half a mind to ride to Kortal and wring the old man's neck until the answers came tumbling out of his mouth. The more he thought of it, the more appealing the idea sounded. Savage folk often needed reminders of their true place in the world, and perhaps a hangman's noose would be reminder enough.